Good morning, guys. Hi, Ginger. Lord Vengeance. Good morning, sweetheart. How are you guys this morning? Or for you this evening? I'm good, I'm good. I'm drinking some hot chocolate. My allergy is, if I sound a bit off today, guys, it's because my allergies kicked in today. They decided to mow the lawn outside our building this morning. Yay! You're still sick? Oh no!
Yes! Yes!
Oh, thank you, Ginger.
Yes! Yes!
Oh, we have a J Cliff as well? Good morning, sweetie. And Trinity Wolf. Good morning, sweetie. Oh, we have the gang here. All the cool kids.
Yes! Yes!
Doing pretty good, actually. Doing pretty good. So, how are you guys? Did you guys have a great day? And for those who have, it's on the, I'm just kidding when I say this, on the right side of the world, the Europeans, with the correct time. Have you guys slept well? You didn't sleep much. Oh no. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. You can't get to sleep? So staying up real late and having a coffee first? Well, then you can listen to my horrible voice and see if you can fall asleep. Sorry for the thing, guys. Are you guys ready? We have reached chapter 23 in the book The Way of Shadows. The perfect killer has no friends, only targets. Good, good, good. And the sounds in the background, they are not too loud compared to my voice? I hope not. Excuse me. You can't hear the sounds in the background? The rain? Is it all of you that can't hear the sounds? Ah, okay. Well, let's start, guys. Chapter 23. Someone slapped Kylar, not gently. Wake up, boy. Kylar clawed his way out of a nightmare and saw the face of Master Blind, a foot away, about to slap him again. Master! He stopped. Master Tully! Good to see you remember me, Kylar, Master Blind said. Master Blind got up and shut the door. I don't have much time. Are you well yet? Don't lie to please me. I'm still a little weak, sir, but I'm getting better. Kylar's heart was pounding. He'd been desperate to see Master Blind for weeks, but now that he was here, Kylar was inexplicably angry. You'll probably feel terrible for a few more weeks. Either the Kinderperil or and the Avadora paste interacted in a way I didn't expect, or it might have something to do with your talent. What's that mean, the talent? Kylar asked. His words were sharper than he intended, but Blind didn't seem to notice. Well, if it was that, Master Blind shrugged. Sometimes a body doesn't react well to magic at first. I mean, what does it mean? Will I be able to fly? Become invisible? Scale walls? Throw fire? Walk as a god among mortals? Blind smirked. Doubtful. I was going to ask if I'll be able to move as fast as you do. Again, the edge came into his voice. I don't know yet, Kylar. You'll be able to move faster than most men without the talent. But there aren't many who are as gifted as I am. What will I be able to do then? You're weak, Kylar. We'll talk about this later. I don't have anything to do. I can't even get out of bed. No one tells me anything. Fine. It means everything and nothing. In the Wadrin, or Alitera, they'd call you a mage, and 6 different schools would fight over where and what you should study, and what color robes you should wear. In Lodricar, or Calidor, they'd call you a Meister, and you'd grow the veer on your arms like tattoos, and worship your king as a god, while you plotted how to stab his royal back. In Umur, you'd be a stalker, an honored and honorable hunter of animals and sometimes men. In Friaku, you'd be Gurathi, a furious warrior invincible in your clan, and one day king, versed in the arts of subjugation and slavery. In the west, well, you'd be in the ocean. He grinned. Hylar didn't. The mages guess. They'd say hypothesis to make it more respectable, that different countries produce different talents, and that's why men with pale skin and blue eyes become witches, while swarthy men are warrior Gurathi. They say that's why the only mages they get from Gandu are healers. They see men with yellow skin who can heal and proclaim that yellow skin means healing, but they are wrong. Our world is divided, but the talent is one. Every people recognizes some form of magic, except for the Leynot, who hate magic and simultaneously don't believe in it. But that is a different subject. But every people has its own expectations about magic. Gandu once produced some of the most destructive arch-magi the world had known. They saw horrors you couldn't imagine, and because of that, they turned away from magic as weaponry. The only magic they value is healing magic. So as centuries have passed, they've added greatly to their knowledge of healing magics and lost most others. A Gandian who is greatly talented with fire is ashamed to himself and his family. So we'd never hear about him, Kyler said. Right. There's an intersection between what the people around you know well enough to teach, what you're naturally good at, and what is possible for you to learn. So the talent both is what it is, and it is what it has to be, like your mind. Kyler just looked at him. Take it this way. Some people can add long lists of numbers in their head, right? And some can speak a dozen languages. To do that, they have to be smart, right? Right, Kyler said. But just because you can learn to add lists of numbers doesn't mean you will. But a woman who handles account books and has a gift for numbers can, or a diplomat might have a gift for languages, but if he never learns another language, He'll still only know one. Kylo nodded. The woman with a head for numbers could probably learn another language if she worked hard enough, but she'll never be fluent in a dozen, and the man will never be able to add columns of numbers mentally. Do you see where this is going? Kylo thought, and Master Blind waited. We know that I'm talented, but not how or how much, so you can't tell what I'll be able to do. Right, Master Blind said. From having me teach you, you'll definitely learn some things. You need to hide. Your talent will bend some lighter way. You need to walk quietly. It will muffle your steps. But like any talent, it has limits. If you walk in the noonday sun, you will be seen. If you step on dry leaves, you will be heard. You are talented. You are not a god. You might have the smoothest tongue in the world, but if you swear at the king, you'll meet the headsman. If I know 12 languages and you speak to me in the 13th, I won't know what you're saying. Sometimes you do listen, Master Blind said. I have to go now. Count Drake will take care of you. He's a good man, Kylar. Too good. You can trust him with your life. Just don't get him started on your soul. And think of yourself as Kylar always. Azoth is dead. Dead? That released all the memories and fear and anger that had been building up in Kylar like pressing the trigger plate of a crossbow. Just like that, his mask fell away, and he was Azoth once more. Azoth grabbed Master Blind's arm. I really No, you didn't. Does this look like hell? Blind gestured. Ha! And they wouldn't let me visit heaven. But Azoth could remember looking down at a knife sticking out of his chest. It had seemed so real. How could such a thing be? I couldn't work for them, Master Blind said. I'd be a bloody sword to them. They wouldn't be able to clean me, and they wouldn't be able to sheath me. They would have killed me eventually. It's easier to keep your eye on your enemies than on your friends. So you've been killing wet boys? Azoth asked, trying to get a hold of herself. Good morning, Damien. How are you, sweetie? Just doing good, just doing wrist and back end stuff.
Yes!
How was your trials yesterday? Yeah, try again. Ginger?
Yes. Yes.
Can you give J. Cliff and Trinity and Lord Vengeance a new one, please?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. 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 Yes.
There we go. There. Now all is right in the world. All right, let's get back to reading. So you've been killing wet boys, Azoth asked, trying to get hold of himself. For weeks he'd been keeping himself from thinking about that afternoon. Hi, OG sweetie. May I have a shout out for OG, please? We have all the cool kids here this morning, guys. Boop boop. Lots of cool kids. For weeks he'd been keeping himself from thinking about that afternoon. But now he couldn't hold it back. He remembered the look in the Lord General's eyes, the utter shock. He remembered following those eyes to his own chest.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Nobody good would take the job on me. Men like Rabel and Gibbet and Severin get paid too well doing regular jobs to risk their lives taking on a real wet boy. I don't know about cool, I mean funny looking. Aw, I was watching you last night. You're a cool kid. So now remember, you are stern. You're proud of that, even if you're poor. The Sterns are barren, so they're up on nobility, but at the lowest level. I know, Asos said, cutting him off. I know. Was it just his imagination, or had Master Blind just looked guilty? The wet boy fished in a pocket and popped a garlic clove in his mouth. If it were anyone else, Athos would have sworn he was trying to distract him, rushing to get out of the room before Athos could pin him down. Why was I so eager to please a man who was willing to murder me? I thought he cared. In the weeks that he'd been here in bed, Kylar had been alone. He'd left everything of his old life, He'd had real friends in Jarl and Doll Girl. They had cared about him. Now he was pretending to be friends with Logan Geyer, and even he had left. Not even Mama Kay came to visit. It almost physically hurt when the Count and Countess came in at the same time. They so obviously loved each other. They were safe and happy and real together. Even Logan and Sarah sometimes traded looks that made it obvious they liked each other. Those looks, that love, filled Kyler with a yearning so deep he thought his chest was going to cave in. It wasn't just hunger. A Gilrad knew hunger like he knew the sewers where he huddled for warmth in the winter. Hunger wasn't comfortable, but it was familiar and it was nothing to fear. This was a thirst like his whole body was parched, drying up, about to crumble. He was dying of thirst on the shores of the world's biggest lake. None of it was for him. To him, that lake was an ocean. It was a salt sea that, if he drank, would make him thirstier and thirstier until he went mad and died. Love was death for a wet boy. Madness and weakness and vulnerability and death. Not just for the wet boy himself, but also for the other one he loved. Anyone, sorry. Everything about Azor's life was dead. He'd sworn that he would never love, but he'd never seen anything like what the Count and Countess shared when he promised that it would be tolerable if anyone cared about him at all. In the time he'd been with Master Blend, he started to think that the wet boy liked him, cared about him. He believed that sometimes Master Blend was even proud of him. Even though everything about the grey-haired Lord General was foreign to Azotha, there was something right in the outrage and disbelief that had been in his eyes. Excuse me. When Master Blend stabbed Azotha. He shouldn't have done it. Azotha burst into tears. How could you do it? What's wrong with you? It wasn't right. Blend was caught off guard for a moment. Then he was suddenly furious. He grabbed Azor's tunic and shook him. Damn you! Use your head. If you aren't smarter than this, I should have killed you. Did he believe me when I said I didn't care if they killed you? Azor looked away, admitting it. You planned it all along. Of course I did. Why do you think we bleached your hair? It was the only way to save you. Azor had to die so Kylar could live. Otherwise, they had a hole. Any attachment you make in this life will be used against you. That's why we're strong. That's why 4 wet boys couldn't kill me. Because I have no attachments. That's why you can't fall in love. It makes you weak. As soon as you find something you can't walk away from, you are trapped, doomed. If anyone thinks I give the hair on a rat's arse what happens to you, you become a target for everyone. How does he do it? He's so strong. Now look at my damn hands. Blint held them up. Both were empty. He made a fist and smacked it down on one arm. A bloody dagger sprouted from the opposite side. He jerked his hand away, and the knife pulled back through his flesh. Then it frayed apart the smoke like smoke and disappeared. I have a small talent with delusions, Kylar. I did a better job with yours because I had to sell it. But all I did was hit you in the back with the knockout needle, then hold the illusion until it took effect. But I felt it, Kylar said. He was regaining his balance. The tears were gone. He was thinking of himself as Kylar again. Sure you felt it. You felt me hit you and you saw a dagger coming out of your chest. At the same time, your body was trying to fight off a dozen minor poisons. You made what sense of it you could. It was a gamble. That illusion used up almost all of the power I can use in a day. If Aegon's men had stormed the palace, we would have been finished. The poisons I used wreaked havoc with your body. They could have killed you. Again, a gamble I had to make. Master Blind doesn't care what happens to me. It hit him like a lightning. Master Blind had risked using up his powers to save Azoth. Oh, try again. Master Blind does care what happens to me. It hit him like lightning. Master Blind had risked using up his powers to save Azoth, even if it were just the affection of Master might have for a talented apprentice. Blind's approval washed over Azoth, Kylar, as if the wet boy had given him a hug. No an adult had ever cared what happened to him. The only other person who'd ever risked anything for him was Jarl, and Jarl was part of another life. The truth was, Azoth hated Azoth. Azoth was a coward, passive, weak, afraid, disloyal. Azoth had hesitated. Master Blind didn't know it, but the poisons on the needle had killed Azoth. He was Kylar now. And Kylar would be everything Azoth hadn't dared to be. In that moment, Azoth became Kylar, and Kylar became Blintz. If he had ever obeyed his master half-heartedly before, or out of fear, if he had ever fantasized about one day coming back and killing him for how hard the training was, it all dried up and blew away now. Master Blind was being hard on Kylar because life was hard. Life was hard, but Blind was harder, stronger, tougher than anything the Warrens could throw at him. He forbade love because love would destroy Kylar. Master Blind knew better than Kylar did. He was strong, and he would make Kylar strong. He was fierce, and Kylar would be fierce. But it was all for Kylar. It was all to protect him, to make him the best wet boy he could be. So it wasn't love. So what? It was something. Maybe nobles got to live on the shores of that lake and drink at their pleasure. That life hadn't been decreed for a guild rat. Kylo's life was a desert life, where there is a life in the desert, and a small oasis had Kylar's name on it. There were no room for Azoth. The oasis was too small, and Azoth was too thirsty. But Kylar could do it. Kylar would do it. He'd make Master Blinn proud. Good, Master Blinn said. Of course he couldn't see what Kylar was thinking, but Kylar knew the eagerness in his eyes were unmistakable. Now, boy, are you ready to become a sword in the shadows? I will have to be right back, guys.
Pika?
I am back, guys. I'm really sorry. I had a family call and hello, Damien. No Pika. Thank you, sweetie. Chapter 24. Get up, boy. It's time to kill. Oh my god. How can I remove that sound? Kylar was awake instantly. He was 14 years old, and the training had sunk in enough that he went through his survival checklist instantly. For each question, there was only a cheer's answer. Each sensation got only the briefest moment of his attention. What woke you? Voice? What do you see? Darkness, dust, afternoon light. Shack. What do you smell? Lint, sewage, the plith. What do you feel? Warm blanket, fresh straw, my bed, no warning tingles. Can you move? Yes. Where are you? Safe house. Is there danger? The last question, of course, was the culmination. He could move. His weapons were in their sheath. All was well. That wasn't guaranteed, not even here, in this dingy safe house, in the shadow of one of the few sections of the ancient aqueduct that was still standing. More than once, Durso had tied a sword to the ceiling over Kylar's bed, and then the damn thing was nearly invisible when you had to look at it point first. Durso had woken Kylar, and when he didn't recognize the danger within 3 seconds, Durso had cut the rope. Fortunately, he capped the point that first time, and the second time. The third time he didn't. Another time, Durso scarred Rabel. Only Durso called him Ben. Wake, Kylar. Scarred Rabel had even worn Durso's clothes and mimicked his voice perfectly. That was part of Scarred Rabel's talent. That time, Kylar hadn't been caught. Even a garlicky meal didn't give a man the same smell as chewing the clove straight. Recording Durso's words came last. Time to kill. You think I'm ready? Kyler asked, his heart pounding. You were ready a year ago. I just needed the right job for your first solo. What is it? I was ready a year ago? Blint's compliment came like that, when they came at all. And usually, even a grudging compliment would be followed by some criticism. It's at the castle, and it's got to be finished today. Your debtor is 26-year-old, no military training, shouldn't be armed. But he's well liked. A busy little bee, very busy. An assassin would incur ancillary facilities. He said assassin with a sneer, and would as would any wit boy. But it doesn't matter for the contract. The debtor just had to die. Just finished the job. Kylar's heart pounded. So this was how it was going to be. This wasn't a simple test. It wasn't. Can Kylar kill Solo? It was. Can Kylar do what a wit boy does? Can Kylar decide a suitable entry strategy to the castle itself, no less? Can he kill Solo? Can he do it without killing innocents? Can he get out after the head? Oh, and can he use his talent? The true measure of what separates a wet boy from a common assassin. Hello, Robert. And have a little lamp next to your bed, sweetie. How the hell does Splint come up with these things? The man had a brilliance for ferreting out and exploiting Kylo's weaknesses. Especially his biggest weakness of all. Kyler hadn't been able to use the talent. Not yet. Not even once. It should have quickened by now. He was forever pushing Kyler in new ways, hoping that some new extreme of stress, of need, might bring it out of him. Nothing had worked yet. Durso had wondered aloud if he should just kill Kylar instead. He decided that as long as Kylar could do everything a Whitboy could do, Durso would keep training him. He promised that it would be ultimately fail. It was impossible. A wet boy wasn't a wet boy without the talent. Who took out this contract? Kyler asked. The Shinga. You're trusting me with that? You're going in this afternoon. If you fuck it up, I go in tonight and I bring the Shinga 2 heads. Kyler didn't have to ask who the other head would belong to. What did the debtor do? You don't need to know. Does it matter? A knife appeared in Durso's hand, but his eyes weren't violent. He was thinking. He flipped the knife from finger to finger. Finger, 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 stop. Finger, 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 roll. Kylar has seen a bard do that once with a coin, but only Durso used the knife. No, Durso said, it doesn't. Name's Devon Corgi, and let's just say that when most people try to turn away from the darkness, they want to take a few bags packed with goodies with them. It slows them down. They never make it. I've only known one man in all my life who was willing to pay the full price of leaving this arcade. Who was it? Boy, in 2 hours, you've got a date with the debtor. You've got better questions to ask. Devon Corgi. The guard furrowed his brow. Nah, I don't know him. Hey, Gamble, do you know a Devon Corgi? He asked another guard walking through the castle's enormous west gate. It was almost too easy. Kylar had long ago stolen the tunic and bag that was the uniform of the city's most widely used courier service. People who didn't have their own servants employed boys, East Side boys, never guild rats, to take their message. Whenever guards had looked like they might ask questions, Kyla walked up to them and asked for directions. Don't they know? Can't they see? These men were guards. They were supposed to be protecting, to be protecting Devon Corgi and everyone else in here. And they were going to direct the killer right to him. How could they be so dumb? It was an uneasy feeling of power. It was gratifying that all the hours with Blent was definitely doing something. Kylar was becoming dangerous. And yet, how could they not see what he was? Sure, he's the one came in this all week with his eyes twitching, jumping as shadows. I think he's up in the North Tower. If you want me to take your message, I could. I'm on duty in 10 minutes. It's the first stop of my rounds. No thanks, I'm hoping for a good tip. Which way is it? As the guard gave Kylar directions, he tried to formulate his plan. To kill itself shouldn't be hard. A kid should get much closer than a grown-up before he roused suspicion, and then it would be too late. The hard part was finding the man. Devon didn't just have an office somewhere, he moved around. That added all sorts of risks, especially because Kylar needed to get the kill done today. The North Tower sounded good. Isolated. The guard coming sounded bad. Kylar had just talked to the man and told him who he was looking for. With the makeup Blent had used on him, Kylar looked totally different and younger by years. But it was best to let every death be a mystery. A wet boy leaves corpses, not evidence. So Kylar would find Corgi and hide until the guard came and left. Then he'd kill him. In and out, no problem, even without the talent. Do you guys think he will be able to kill this guy? The castle was awe-inspiring. Though Blind always spoke of it with scorn, it was the most magnificent building Kylar had ever seen. It was the same black granite as the old aqueducts in the Warrens, quarried in the mountains on the Suran border. You think he will fail? You might be right. The entire quarrying industry was owned by the Sarkage, so now only the wealthy could afford to build with stone. It was one of the reasons most of the aqueduct's pillars were gone now. The non-Sarkage poor in the Warren scavenged the rock for their own use, for their own black market sale. Bilking the Sarkage entailed distinct dangers to the middle class. The castle had been built 400 years ago, when for the 30 years of King Abinazzi's rule, Scenaria was a major power. He had barely finished the castle when he decided to push further east and take the Chantry, and several thousand Magai had ended his ambitions permanently. The castle had first been constructed on their Mott and Bailey design at least 100 years earlier. Surrounded by the natural moat of the Plith River, Ross Island has been built up into a larger hill, on top of which sat the fortress. What was now the north side of the Warrens had been the original Bailey. The Warrens were on narrow peninsula that dropped off sharply into the sea except for the last half-mile, which flattened out before the shoreline. The design were so defensible that neither the wood fortress nor the wood-walled Warrens had ever been taken, but the city had expanded along with King Abinaz's pride. So Castle Scenaria had been built of stone, and the city jumped to the east shore of the Plith. The aqueducts, however, were a mystery. They had been there long before King Abinaze and seemed to serve no purpose, as the Plith was freshwater. It's not terrible clean. Leaving the diamond-shaped castle yard, Kylar walked up stone stairs that had been climbed by so many feet over the centuries that the middle of each step dipped several inches lower than the sides. The guards ignored him, and he assumed the attitude of a servant. It was one of his most frequent guises. Blint liked to say that it's a good disguise, cloaked the wet boy better than the shadows. Kylar could walk right past almost anyone he knew, with the exception of Count Drake. Not much escaped him. Soon he passed through most of the buzz of activity that filled the inner yard and the great hall. He went past the lines of people waiting for an audience in the throne room, past the open double doors of the garden, and made his way to the North Tower. Oh, we are just gonna do a small update, guys, so I will be right back. I am back, guys. The halls were busy elsewhere until he stepped into the North Tower's antechamber. Devon Corgi wasn't there. For the first time, taking pains to be silent, Kylar opened the door that led to the stairs and climbed them quietly. The stairway was blank, nothing decorative. No niches, no statues, no ornamental curtains or anything that would afford Kylar a place to hide. Thank you, dear. He made his way to the top of the tower. It seemed, just a large bedchamber, currently not being used. A young man balancing a large ledger book was going through the drawers of a bureau, apparently taking an inventory of the neatly folded sheets for the enormous feather bed and the alternate curtains for the large shuttered window. Kyla waited. Devon was turned sideways to the door, and without the talent to shadow Kyla's approach, there was a good chance the man would see him enter. The waiting was always the worst. Keyed up with no place to go, Kyler began to entertain fantasies that the guard was going to come up the stairs at any minute. Seeing him here this late, he'd search him. Searching him, he found a slit in Kyler's trousers. Finding that hand-sized slit, he'd find the long knife strapped to Kyler's inner thigh. But there were nothing for it. Kyler waited, just out of sight, listening, willing his ears to fear even the scratch of the quill on the ledger. Finally, he checked and saw Devon disappearing into the closet on the far side of the nearly circular chamber. Kylar crept into the chamber and looked for places to hide. His feet made no sound, not even the sound of leather scuffing against stone. Master Blind had taught Kylar how to boil the sap of the rubber tree to make a shoe sole that was soft and silent. It was expensive to import and only a little quieter than properly worked leather, but to Master Blind, even the smallest margin mattered. It was why he was the best. There were no good places to hide. A great place to hide was one where Kylar would be able to see the entire room, keep his weapons at ready. A good place to hide gave a decent view of the ability to strike or escape with only a little difficulty. This room had no dark corners. It was practically a circle. There were rice paper screens, but they'd been folded and were leaning against the wall. Pitifully, the only place to hide was under the bed. If Kylar was a wet boy, perhaps he could have vaulted up a wall and dangled off the claims of the chandelier. But that wasn't an option. Under the bed, Master Blind will never let me live this down. Ripsy, hi! But there were no other option. Kylar dropped flat onto his toes and fingertips crawled under the bed, and it was good he was still slight, because there wasn't much space. He was uncomfortable in place where he heard someone coming up the stairs. The guard, finally. Now take a quick look and get the hell out. He'd chosen the side of the bed with a view of the closet. In that moment, he didn't have a view of the stairs. But from the sound of the footsteps, he became certain that it wasn't a guard. Devon stepped out of the closet holding a chest, and guilt flashed across his face. "You can't be here, Bev," he said. "You're leaving," the unseen woman said. It was an accusation. "No," he said, his eyes start twitching. "Now you stole from them, and now you're stealing from the king, and for some reason, I'm surprised. You lied to me, asshole." Pilar heard her turn, and then Devon was stepping close to the bed, putting the chest down on it, his legs just inches away from Kylar's. Bev, I'm sorry. He was moving towards the door, and Kylar was stricken with panic. What if Devon went after her, and she went down the steps? Kylar would have to kill both of them on the stairs. I'm just choosing to ignore it, Robert, because I'm reading. And this is what we are here for, reading today. Kylar would have killed both of them on the stairs, knowing that the guard would be coming along any minute. Bev, please. Go to hell, she said, and slammed the door. Wish granted. It was the blackest kind of humor, Durso's kind of humor. He liked to say that the irony of overheard conversations was one of his best perks, of the best perks, of the bitter business, though he said that the wisdom of last words were highly overrated. Wish granted. Kylar didn't like that he even thought that. Everything this man had planned was about to end, and Kylar was smirking about it. Devon swore to himself, but he didn't follow the woman. Where's that guard anyway? He was supposed to be here by now. This was what it was like. Darso had told Kylar, "You come in at the end of a drama, whether it's just started or has been going on for years. Your arrival signals the end, and you rarely get to know what the story was about." Who was Bev to Devon? His lover? His partner in crime? Just a friend? His sister? Hello, you know, anonymous? Kylar didn't know. He'd never know. I have a feeling it's AJ. It's a sin! Hello, sweetie. Hello, hello. Long time no see. How have you been, sweetie? That's good. There was jingling on the stairs, muffled behind the door. Devon picked up his ledger. The door opened. "Hello, Dev," the guard said. "Oh, hello, Gamble." Devon sounded nervous. "That courier found you?" "Courier?" "Little shite. Must got lost." "Everything's fine up here?" "Sure, it's fine." "Good night, Robert. I hope you sleep well." We'll see you around. Devon waited until the guard had been gone 30 seconds, and then he stepped close to the bed and started stuffing his pockets. Kylar couldn't see with what. Here it is. The guard would be far enough away that even if Devon managed to cry out, he wouldn't be heard. Devon stepped away from the bed towards the bureau, and Kylar crawled out from beneath the bed like a bug. He stood and drew the knife. Devon was mere paces away. Kylar's heart was pounding. He thought he could hear the rush of blood in his ears. Kylar did everything right. Lo, ready stands, advancing quietly but quickly. Balanced so that if any moment the dealer reacted, Kylar wouldn't be caught flat-footed. He brought the knife up to a level eye, preparing to grab Devon and give him what Durso called the red grin. A slash across the jugular and deep through the windpipe. Then he imagined Dolgo giving him the look she'd given him when he took the biggest piece of bread for himself. What are you doing, Azoth? You know this is wrong. He recovered late, and it was as if his training abandoned him. Kylar was inches away from Devon, and Devon still hadn't heard him. But the very nearness panicked Kylar. He stabbed for Devon's neck and must have made some sound because Devon was turning. The knife bit into the back of Devon's neck, hit spine, and bounced out. Because of his convulsively tight grip that Durso would have beaten Kylar for, the knife bounced right out of his hand too. Devon turned and yelped. It seemed he was more surprised by Kylar's sudden appearance than by the sting in his neck. He stepped back at the same time Kylar did. He put a hand on his neck, looked at his fingers and saw the blood. Then they both looked down to the knife. Devon didn't go for it. Kylar scooped up the knife as he stood. Devon dropped to his knees. Please, he said. Please don't. It seemed incredible. The man's eyes were big with fear. Looking a little Kylar, whose disguise made him look even smaller and younger. There were nothing frightening about him, was there? But Devon looked like a man who's seen his judgment come. His face was white, eyes round, pitiful, helpless. Please, he said again. Kylar slashed his throat in a fury. Why didn't he protect himself? Why didn't he even try? He was bigger than Kylar. He had a chance. Why must he act like a sheep? A big, stupid human lamb. too dumb to even move. The cut went through the windpipe, but barely clipped one jugular. It was deep enough to kill, but not fast. Kylar grabbed Devon's hair and slashed again, twice, slightly up, so the blood shot right down rather than up. Not a drop got on Kylar. He'd done it, just like Durso had taught. There was a sound on the stairs. "Devon, I'm sorry," Bev said before she even got into the room. "I just had to come back. I didn't mean." She stepped into the room and saw Kylar. She saw his face. She saw the dagger in his hand. She saw him holding the dying Devon by his hair. She was a plain young woman wearing a white serving dress, white hips, white spade eyes, mouth open in a little O, and beautiful raven hair. Finish the job. The training took hold. Kylar was across the room in an instant. He yanked the woman forward, swept a foot in, pivoted, and she flipped over onto the ground. He was as inexorable as Durso Blend. The woman was beneath him, face down on the carpet that covered this section of floor. The next move was to slide the knife between her ribs. She'd hardly feel it. He wouldn't have to see her face. He hesitated. It was his life against hers. She'd seen him. His disguise was good, only as long as no one knew there was a 14-year-old murderer about. She'd seen his face. She had intruded on a debtor. She was just collateral damage. An ancillary fatality, Blend said. A wet boy would do what needed to be done. It was less professional, but sometimes unavoidable. It doesn't matter. Blind had said, "Just finish the job." Told ya he would fail? Blind only allowed him to live so long as he proved he could do everything a wet boy did, even without the talent. Yet there she was, facing down. Kylar straddling her on the floor, the point of his dagger pricking her neck. His left hand twisting her hair, trying not to imagine the red blood blooming on her white servant's dress. She'd done nothing. Life is empty. Life is meaningless. When we take a life, we aren't taking anything of value. I believe it. I believe it. There had to be another way. Could he tell her to run? To tell no one? to leave the country and never come back. Would she do it? No, of course not. She'd run to the nearest guard as soon as she was in the presence of some burly castle guard. Any fear Kylar might inspire in her would look as small and weak as a gill rat with a knife. I told him what would happen if he stole from the side cage, she said, her voice oddly calm. That bastard. With everything else he took from me, he didn't even have the decency to die alone. I was coming to apologize. And now you're going to kill me, aren't you? Yes, Kyler said. But he was lying. He had moved the knife to the correct place on her back, but it refused to move. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw a shadow shift on the stairs. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge that he'd seen it, but he felt a chill. It was in the middle of the afternoon. There were no torches burning now, no candles. That shadow could only be Master Blint. He'd followed Kylar. He watched everything. The job was for the Shinga, and it wouldn't be botched. Kylar slid the knife between her ribs, pulled it sideways, felt the shudder and sigh of the woman dying beneath him. He stood and pulled the knife from her flesh. His mind suddenly detached, pulling away from him as it had the day in the boat shop with Rad. He wiped the red blade on her white dress, sheathed it along his thigh, and checked himself in the room's mirror for blood, just like he'd been taught. It was all the sorrow in the world to him that he was clean. There wasn't any blood on his hands. When he turned, Blint stood in the open doorway, arms folded. Kylar just looked at him, still hovering somewhere behind his own body, glad for the numbness. Not great, Durso said, but acceptable. The Shinka would be pleased. He pursed his lips, seeing the distance in Kylar's eyes. Life is meaningless. Durso said, rolling a garlic clove between his fingers. Life is empty. When we take a life, we take nothing of value. Repeat it, damn you. Durso's hand moved, and a knife blurred through the air, thunking into the bureau behind Kylar. He didn't even flinch. He repeated the words mechanically, fingers a tingle, feeling again and again that easy slip of meat parting around the knife. Was it so easy? Was it so simple? You just push, and death came? Nothing spiritual about it. Nothing happened. No one was whisked to Count Drake's heaven or hell. They just stopped. They stopped talking, stopped breathing, stopped moving. Finally, stop twitching. Stopped. The pain you feel, Master Blint said, almost gently, is the pain of abandoning a delusion. The delusion is God's. Nope, sorry. The delusion is meaning, Kylar. There's no higher purpose. There are no guards. The arbiter of risk and wrong. You don't ask. I don't ask you to like reality. I only ask you to be strong enough to face it. There is nothing beyond this. There is only the perfection we attain by becoming weapons, as strong and merciless as a sword. There is no essential good in living. There is nothing in itself. It's a place marker that proves who's winning. And we are the winners. We are always the winners. There is nothing but the winners. Even winning means nothing. We win because it is an insult to lose. The end doesn't justify the means. The means don't justify the ends. There is no one to justify to. There is no justification. There is no justice. Do you know how many people I've killed? Kylar shook his head. Me neither. I used to. I remember the name of every person I killed outside a battle. Then it was too many. I just remembered the number. Then I remembered only the innocents. Then I forgot even that. Do you know what punishments I've endured for my crimes, my sins? None. I'm a proof of the absurdity of men's most treasured abstractions. A just universe would tolerate my existence. He took Kyla's hands. On your knees. Kyla knelt at the edge of the pool of the blood seeping from the woman's body. This is your baptism, Master Blint said, putting both of Kyla's hands in the blood. It was warm. This is your new religion. If you must worship, worship as the other wet boys do. Worship Nisus, god of blood, semen and wine. At least those have power. Nisus is a lie, like all the gods, but at least he won't make you weak. Today you've become an assassin. Now get out and don't wash your hands. And one more thing. When you've got to kill an innocent, don't let them talk. Kylar staggered through the streets like a drunk. Something was wrong with him. He should feel something, but instead there were only emptiness. It was like the blood on his hands had burst from some soul wound. The blood was drying now, getting sticky. The bright red fading to brown everywhere, but inside his clenched fists. He hid his hands, hid the blood, hid himself, and his mind, less numb than his heart, knew that there was a point in this too. Hylar himself was a mask, an identity assumed for convenience. That mask and every other would fade, become more before his training was done. Every distinguished feature of the Azoth who had been would be obliterated. Every mask would fit. Every mask would fool every inspector, because there would be nothing underneath those masks. Hylar couldn't wear his courier disguise into the Warrens. Couriers never went to the Warrens, so he headed to an east side safe house on a block crowded with the tiny homes of artisans and those servants not housed at their lord's estates. He rounded a corner and ran straight into a girl. She would have gone sprawling if he hadn't grabbed her arms to catch her. "Sorry," he said. His eyes took in the simple servant. The simple servant's white dress, hair bound back, and a basket full of fresh herbs. Last he saw the gory red smears he just left on each of her slaves before he could disappear. Started running down the street before he saw how he stained her. The arcs and cross of scars on her face clicked into place like the piece of the puzzle. They were white snow scars now, where he had branded them into his mind as deep red inflamed cuts, burst tissue, dripping blood, the rough scrape of muted gurgle of blood being swallowed, blood bursting into little bubbles. A round and destroyed nose. He only had time to see unmistakable scars and unmistakably big brown eyes. Dolga looked down demurely, not recognizing this murderer as her Azoth. The downward glance showed her the gore on her sleeves, and she looked up. Horror etched every feature not already etched with scars. "My God," she said, "you're bleeding. Are you all right?" He was already running, sprinting headlessly through the market. But no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't outrun the concern and the horror in those beautiful eyes. Those big brown eyes followed him. Somehow, he knew they always would. Chapter 25. But that is that today, guys. At least for the reading today. Yes, a short one today. Well, they are normally short, but a shorter one today. Well, they are normally short, but a shorter one today. That was fast. Been streaming for 2 hours. Nearly 2 hours. You didn't notice? And we're gonna raid off. Gonna raid off to Hetty, guys. So get ready to copy, paste. I would appreciate it if you guys would stay for the raid. I will see you guys later. For some Vet Rock Grove hard mode and some BAS +2. Yep. Take care, guys. And I will see you later. Bye.
Dark Raiden, thank you so much for the raid. I appreciate you. I hope you had a fantastic stream.